Hey guys, so it is the half-term holidays and I decided to treat myself to some baking. That is my recipe right there, as well as a block of butter, some sugar, some flour, some salt, a bunch of large eggs, some vanilla extract, and baking powder. The first thing I'm going to be doing is measuring up my butter. I've always been taught to do this with a measuring cup, so I have 2 cups of water in there, and I'm going to add butter until the water line reaches 3 cups. Then I have 1 cup of butter in there. That is a lot of math for first thing in the morning, but it does work. As it turned out, that was exactly 2 cups of butter anyways. Now the first time I did this recipe, the recipe actually calls for 2 sticks of butter / 2 cups of butter. And what I didn't know when I did this is that in America, butter is sold in sticks, and I guess each stick is the equivalent of 1 cup. So I was looking at my European block of butter, and it has these lines on the wrapper that mark out 50 grams, because in Europe, most baking recipes run by weight rather than volume. And I thought, okay, well, I'll cut 2 of those lines, and I'll have 2 blocks or slices of butter. Well, let me tell you, 100 grams of butter is nowhere near 2 cups. It's not even near 1 cup of butter. So my recipe was dry and crumbly and a complete fail. Learn from my mistake when it comes to the butter. And then I just wash my hands. I did wash my hands before I started as well, though, don't worry. Not that you're eating these cookies, so why would you worry? Alright, I did not take the butter out last night to soften because I am a silly girl. So here I'm cutting it into smaller chunks in the hopes that it will warm up a little bit faster. You see I'm applying some biology and some science because it has a better surface area to volume ratio now. Yeah, way too much science first thing in the morning. Alright, I'm going to be adding 4 cups of flour, and I am one of those people that just really does not like sifting ingredients. I know it's really important, but I can't be bothered. Fortunately, this sieve I think had larger holes than most do because it went through really easily. I'm also going to be adding half a teaspoon of salt and 1 full teaspoon of baking soda. Or not baking soda, baking powder. Powder, really important. The baking powder will help it to rise when it's cooking a little bit. And grabbing a whisk, I'm going to stir it all together. Saying whisk is really fun. In the bottom of the bowl, you can actually see the camera and the tripod and the laptop on the floor in the reflection. But here I'm going to be adding 2 cups of sugar, and you'll see me stopping the mixer every once in a while to kind of scrape the dough off the apparatus in the middle. That's because it will stick to it, and when it does that, obviously there's nothing to stir because it's all on the tool itself. So I had to keep stopping it and moving it off. I also added 2 large eggs and some vanilla. I separated half of the dough and put it into that red bowl behind the mixer, and here I'm just adding a little bit of blue food dye to the dough that is still in the mixer. And it did not happen this quickly, but it did go blue. And once again, I'm just going to be scraping that off. So, put some flour onto your clean, dry surface, and we are going to be kneading the dough. What this does is it brings it all together into one piece. It gets rid of all the bubbles and creases and anything that's going to make it crumble when you roll it out later. You can see that I'm pressing it with the bottom of the palm of my hand. Where the palm of your hand meets your wrist, there's like kind of 2 large bones, I guess, or the ends of 2 bones, and that's what I'm using to press with. Don't forget to keep on powdering because otherwise your cookie dough is going to stick to the counter and it's really hard to clean it off later on. Well, it's not really hard, it's just not ideal. I'm just going to pat this into a kind of flat circle, and I'm going to wrap it up with some plastic wrap. Then I'm going to be sticking it into the fridge for about 30 minutes. When you're baking, it's really important to use cool surface tops and have cool hands. I don't know why, but it's bad if your cookie dough gets all warm. I think it's because it doesn't hold its shape as well when you're wanting it to stay, say, a star shape or something. And I think also because it has raw egg in it. So as you can see, I did the same thing for the blue. Now, powdering the surface down again, I'm going to be rolling out my cookie dough. I was really happy with how this turned out. I was worried the butter wasn't soft enough, but as you can see, it was really smooth. There's no lumps and it's not falling apart. As you're doing this, you're going to have to continue to add powder because it kind of soaks up into the dough. And look how huge I got! I actually had a lot of cookie dough there. I think the instructions say that you should measure, you should roll it out until about 1/8 of an inch. I had no idea how much that is, so I just went until I thought it looked good. I have cut out some circles using a large cup, and then of the circles, I'm going to cut out some stars. As you can see, I did the exact same thing for the blue dough. Now, don't worry if it breaks apart like that. It actually makes it a little bit easier for the next step. So I'm going to be putting this blue star into the colorless circle. And basically you can kind of open the circle up a little bit, and then that way you can segment it into place better. Now as it is going to fall apart really, really easily. Don't worry about that, because when it bakes, it will become more of a solid piece, and the star is not going to fall out of the middle of your cookie while you're eating it. However, I would recommend using a, I think it's called a spatula or a flipper, to move the cookies onto a baking tray. Alright, this is my cooking fail. I attempted to make a swirly cookie by layering 2 similarly sized sheets of cookie dough onto each other and rolling it up. It didn't really work. As you can see, it just kind of fell apart. And when I tried to cut it, it looked gorgeous when I first cut it, and then it just unwrapped itself like a fruit roll-up. Not ideal. I had the suspicion though that if I had put like a thin layer of water on the cookie dough, it may have taken a little bit better. If you know how to make those swirly cookies, can you tell me what I'm doing wrong? Because I was really disappointed. I ended up grabbing a rolling pin to kind of smush it together more and make it flatter. And it did work, and they look cute, but I'm sure there must be an easier way to do this. Hope you guys like my apron. I did manage to get flour all over the kitchen and on my face while doing this. Alright, so the recipe recommended using 335 degrees Fahrenheit. I had no idea what that was in Celsius, so I went for 180, but if my calculations, which I didn't do any calculations, were wrong, then I will put a number on the screen right now. And it says to cook the cookies for 8 to 10 minutes. And now my cookies are finally done. It took me way longer to do that than any normal person would because I'm not very good at baking. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to share it with your friends or share a video response of you baking with your friends. And I will see you next week.